Welcome to the Generation Elevation podcast, a conscious, connected platform for those who are ready to manifest their dream life. I'm your host, Elise Riley, a former PT, now motivational speaker, igniting empowerment and transformation all across the globe. Here at Generation Elevation, we are committed to bringing you the most inspiring guests who will share their stories, wisdom, and advice to help you progress closer to living a life of your own terms. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Elevation. Today, I'm joined with a special guest down here at Melbourne in the Bulldogs studio. And this guest, he is an AFL footballer playing for the forward line for the Bulldogs team. He's the founder of Mendi, and he has been a close friend of mine for a while now. And I'm super excited to have him here on the show. We were actually neighbours for a bit up in Gisborne, and it was really funny because when I transitioned from my personal training journey to becoming a mindset coach, working with athletes, I asked to meet up with this guy and say, hey, look, like I know that you have created Mendi. I'm really curious about this mental health thing and the mindset of athletes and helping people become the best versions of themselves. So for me, I remember sitting down that day at breakfast and asking all the questions, very curious as I was at the time and still am. And I really believe that that moment for me was a huge catalyst for where I am today. So I'm super grateful to have on today Mitch Hannan. How are you?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Elise. Thanks very much for having me today. It's good to see you.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I think today is going to be a really awesome conversation and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be. We've got lots to catch up on and lots to speak about. So
100%. So that last time that we met up, we had breakfast and like I said, I was asking all the questions about mindset, becoming an athlete and all the things. And that was the last time that I saw you. So before we started recording, I was like, oh my gosh, like it has been so long. And to know now that like I'm doing these events and working with some of the world's best athletes, it's really cool to just be able to come back and share that with you. And so I'm curious to know a little bit about your story and how you started Mendi, first of all, and how you've become the person you are today.
Yeah. So I'm 29 years of age, and as we spoke upon before, we grew up as neighbours. So I grew up in the Macedon Ranges, about an hour north of Melbourne. Just a young kid that I've developed late to start off with. So for me, my sporting journey was mainly based out of just having fun, having a run and a kick and some playtime with some friends. And that's what I based it upon. I have a twin sister and a younger sister. There was plenty of activity in the backyard. But for me, from a football point of view, my footballing journey sort of began life after high school. I graduated, still hadn't really hit puberty, to be honest. And I found myself playing some good footy at under 18s level, making my way down to the city to try and play the best level I could. Played in some VAFA amateur football leagues, got a few VFL pre-seasons, had a few setbacks along the way, doing some pre-seasons with a club, Essendon and also Coburg, and unfortunately not making on their list. And then along that path, obviously school had finished and you've got to start making some plans for work and study and whatever else sort of fills up your cup. So I was lucky enough to be able to get into RMIT as well and do a bit of university at the same time whilst playing some semi-professional football. So I did architecture and managed to finish that course over 3 years. And then at the ripe old age of 22, an opportunity came up where I happened to get drafted by the Melbourne Football Club. So,
wow. And what was that experience like for you, that moment when you got the call, or what happened specifically?
To be honest, all the interest that came for me from AFL clubs came really late, sort of happened in a flurry. And I'm going to work day to day in the city at an architecture firm, and I begin getting calls from GWS, Fremantle, Brisbane Lions. And it just happens as a bit of a whirlwind, to be honest, because having any sort of dialogue with an AFL club just seriously lights you up inside. It's so exciting. And then the draft comes along and they don't really give you a lot in regards to, they don't want to sort of get your hopes up too much. So there's a lot of unknown going into that night in particular. But for me, that night, I sat down with some family, a couple of friends. We didn't have Foxtel at home, so we were watching it on my sister's boyfriend's iPad at the time, which happened to be a bit of delayed sort of viewing of the draft. And I went pick 46, and I reckon about 30 seconds before it happened, my phone happened to be on loud as well, started going off in my pocket, vibrating, blowing up with text messages. Wow, like, oh my God, like that's amazing. I'm like, it just felt very euphoric, to be honest. I was like, what is going on here? And then sure enough, 30 seconds later on the iPad, my name popped up.
Wow.
Family and friends sort of erupted.
Yeah, that's amazing. And so you play in the forward line now, obviously for Western Bulldogs, but what has that been, that journey, obviously going from Melbourne to then transitioning to the Bulldogs, and what has that been like for you?
Yeah, it's been a nice transition. I funnily enough started my semi-professional career with the Bulldogs in their VFL team through 2015 and 16, and got drafted from that team into the AFL system for Melbourne. Played for 4 years with them, played in a couple of finals, and we got to the end of 2020, which was right at the back end of what we call like the hub year, the year that we all got sort of transitioned up to Queensland because of COVID, and an opportunity came to get traded back to the Bulldogs as a part of their AFL list. And for me, it was a bit of a no-brainer, just more from an opportunity point of view. I found myself sort of in and out of the team, and also the length of contract. They were happy to have me for a few years. So that's the footy world. It moves at a fast pace, and everyone's looking for their opportunity and time to shine. And for me, that was definitely a move that needed to happen.
And what has been the best moment for you being on the field or being a part of that atmosphere? The first thing that comes to mind.
There's heaps of highs and there's also heaps of lows. I'm not going to lie. The football industry is a roller coaster. I played in the 2021 AFL Grand Final, and funnily enough, it was against my old team in Melbourne. So I had only been away from that group for about 12 months, so still very close friends with a lot of those guys that I was versing on that day, and unfortunately lost that game, which is, to be honest, it's a bit of a bittersweet. I am still very close with those guys, and to see them have the success and the enjoyment that we all sort of strive for was nice to see. But at the end of the day, it's hard to sort of take a loss like that as well when you get so close, playing on the big stage in the biggest game there is in the AFL and not quite getting to the end. But upon reflection, it's been a couple of years now, and I'm sure I'll take this into the future as well. It's one of the most amazing experiences I've been a part of, just the atmosphere and the energy that happens around that week. Everyone's tuned in, and to be a part of that game is just amazing.
Yeah, wow, I could imagine. And you mentioned obviously there's highs, and with that there is the lows, and that there has been setbacks and challenges, and especially being picked or drafted a lot later than most people would. What would be your advice for those people listening who potentially are going through those challenges, those lows in the moment in their life, or they might be thinking, oh, it might be too late for me in regards to my dream or my goal or getting picked for that team, whatever sport they do play? What would be your advice for those people who are listening now? Like, how did you overcome those times?
I reckon you sort of need to strip it back and sort of realise the reason why you're playing the sport in the first place. And it's for me and for a lot of guys, it stems from a childhood of running around and kicking a ball and having that competitive nature come out in you and just having pure joy in the fun and what football brings. When you get into the senior ranks, it becomes a little bit more structured, and you start to worry about the little things, the diet, the sleep, the running patterns that you're doing, your fitness, your weight and so forth. And sometimes you can overcomplicate it a little bit and sort of make things a little bit harder than they need to be when there's a 2 hour window period of sort of running out there and having fun and trying to perform. So it's about, stripping it back, realising why you're out there playing the game. And overall, I think just trying to get that enjoyment that you had as a kid at a senior level, because there's plenty of opportunities for people out there that are sort of striving to get to the highest level. It's about sort of giving yourself the best chance to sort of get there, like purely by sort of the way you approach it from a mindset point of view.
And why do you play? What's your why?
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, it shifts. I think, like I said just prior, growing up, just the enjoyment of running out there with friends, having a win, trying to take marks and speckies on people's heads. It's just that enjoyment that comes with the football is why. And as you grow older, and especially when you get to a ranks within the VFL and AFL levels, and you sort of see the interest that comes with that from the people around you, you do get a great level of satisfaction from the joy that it brings your close family and friends. In particular, my first couple of years, I loved sort of playing a game and knowing I was getting messages prior to the game being like, oh, your auntie's coming, your granddad's coming. Have you got any tickets for your sisters? And then a few of my friends are coming. Can they come down to the rooms? And before you know it, you've got this small army of people that have just got an invested interest in not only you being able to hopefully perform on the big stage, but you as a person and just wanting you to go well and finishing the game, hopefully with a win. That moment where you get to give them a hug, see them in the crowd, high five them, they're just unbelievable sort of moments for sort of myself, and I'm sure for a lot of other people in regards to why we play the game.
That's so beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. So I'm curious to know, how did you then come across Mendel and the creation of that? Like, what sparked that for you?
Yeah, so for people that don't know out there, Mendel is a non-for-profit apparel brand that has been started by myself and my close friend Mark Losewitz. We aim to sort of bring to life the idea of conversation and also normalising mental health, in particular around young adolescent men. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to sort of create something that is not sort of minimalistic and not in your face too much in regards to, from an apparel point of view, having guys feel comfortable in what they're wearing, but it might be also the starting point for them to be able to have a conversation with their friends or whoever may notice the brand itself. So Mendel is an acronym for the words Mending Men's Mental, and was started in very early 2020, and it comes off the back of some first and second hand experiences with myself and also some people around me with some mental health struggles in the past. And I just wanted to create something, especially whilst I was in this football industry, that I could leverage that platform to kind of get that kind of voice and business and messaging out there.
That is really cool. And I even said this the other night when I was recording with KO in the last episode, that it's really cool to see men doing the work and focusing on mindset and having these conversations, because from my perspective, and you can definitely, like, I'm not going to say this is the be all and end all. However, from my model of the world and my perspective, I've noticed that these conversations, the start of the conversations is so hard to have with some men, and maybe that's a societal stigma. And over time, I see that obviously it's with all these mental health organisations coming out and really encouraging this, I'm seeing this more and more, that men are doing the work and having the conversation, which is really exciting. And so I would love to hear about your journey with mental health. And like you said, you've had personal, like first-hand, second-hand experiences with that. And what would be, I guess, sharing your experience, and then what would be your advice for people who potentially may see themselves in you and your journey? What would be your advice for them to get through that, or what they need to hear at this point in time where they're at?
Yeah, my mental health journey and some of the things that I felt in the past probably haven't got any sort of correlation with me and the football industry. That is what I do, but it's not really who I am. And growing up, I had like a lovely childhood, lived in the country and so forth, but I got to a point in my young adolescent life around 21, 22, where there was a few challenges that arose. My parents split up, and I also split up from a long-term relationship myself. I was going through a pretty serious knee injury, and all of those things in isolation aren't the worst things to happen. A lot of people deal with these things over the course of their life, but for me at the time, it was a really overwhelming and unsettling feeling, and stemmed an anxiety in me that I didn't really know how to deal with. I didn't really know what it was initially, and struggled to talk about it, in particularly to some of my closest friends. My first few conversations were with family members, because that's normally where a lot of people feel most comfortable. And from there, I began to open up, and more and more to the point where obviously I'm more than happy talking to yourself about it, and then also leveraging some of those experiences through Mendel for other people to sort of feel comfortable in sort of voicing how they're feeling. So I had a really tough period through 2018, and to be honest, I still sort of ride the ups and downs of some anxiety throughout my life. Doesn't necessarily need to be a catalyst for you to feel a certain way. I think that's something that's important for people out there to understand, is you don't always have to rationalise, oh, I'm feeling this way because this happened. For people that are dealing with certain things, there doesn't need to be a particular reason. What you need to do is be able to understand it and recognise it, and then find the tools and tricks and things within your network and people around you to be able to sort of deal with it as best as you can, and in hindsight as well, also begin to sort of flourish from it, sort of understand it for what it is and use it to your benefit.
And I'm curious to hear, like, what tools or resources did you have available to you that really helped you in your journey?
I think it's finding someone in your circle that you're feeling most comfortable to sort of open up that conversation with. And you can always say, go out there and speak to a psychologist, or there's plenty of helplines and people that you can talk to, and that is the case. But I think initially, if you can find someone that's just worthwhile having the conversation with in closed doors on a couch where you can open up to. Just getting some of those feelings and thoughts that you're having in your head out in the open is like initially the first step in sort of relieving some of those overwhelming sort of sensations that you might be going through. So it's initially sort of opening up to someone very close to you. But me personally, everyone finds little ways to sort of navigate it through. I do quite a bit of meditation these days. I do quite a bit of breath work. I still see a psychologist quite regularly. And then you find little things along the way that keeps your mind busy, gives you a sense of purpose, and kind of gives you that spark day to day to kind of keep your mood up and about.
Mm-hmm. I love this so much. And it's so funny. We were speaking about meditation in the last episode as well. So I'm curious to know, like, how do you specifically do meditation? Like, what does that mean to you?
So I initially started meditation. I do it most mornings and then occasionally in evenings. I normally have no problem falling asleep. But for me personally, some of the hardest times is getting up in the morning and sort of facing the day if I am feeling a certain way. And it's about initially sort of calming your nervous system down, regulating your breath, trying to find yourself in the present moment by focusing on something in particular. And then there's a series of sort of meditations that I sort of roll through. But so probably my favourite one is like progressive muscle relaxation. So it's sort of like focusing your attention on sort of some feelings throughout your body. So whether it's like screwing up your toes, screwing up your fist, tensing up your shoulders, releasing it. And it's forcing you to sort of like, I guess, feeling a sense of reality, like you're sort of feeling your hands touching on the ground, you're feeling your body tense up and then release and so forth. And it sort of normalizes the present moment for you. So that's one of my favorite ones.
Yeah, that's cool. Like associating into your body and really like rather than I find a lot of people when they're in like a stress response disassociate from their body. So by like tensing each muscle like one at a time, it really associates you back into your body in the present moment.
Absolutely. That's it.
Yeah. Cool. And what sort of breath work do you do?
I've only just recently started getting into it. I've been doing it down in Elwood with a lady called the Breath Boss. Just
cool.
Shout out to her. But there's plenty of people doing it these days. And if anything, it's probably trending a little bit at the moment. But I think in hindsight, looking back on my experiences with breath work, it is a form of meditation, really. It's allowing your nervous system to calm down and focusing on your breath as you try and find that presence in the moment. And then it's obviously like a guided space as well. And I just think at the end of it, you just got this, obviously you're over oxygenating your sort of your body as well. So you kind of get this quite a euphoric sort of feeling. And it's also just a nice space to be in when there's other people that are open to trying new things and feeling certain ways. And there's conversations that happen off the back of those kind of sessions, which are like really, really lovely. So I'm really new into it, but really enjoying it.
Yeah, it's such a powerful tool and it's definitely, like you said, it's not really the be-all and end-all, but it's definitely a modality to incorporate into your routine to help with wherever you want to go, whether that is to help with clarity, help with relaxation, help with anxiety. It's so amazing. And the results that I've gotten with my clients with breathwork and in my events, it's like it's something that shouldn't be ignored because the proof is in the pudding kind of thing. Like the results that people have been getting is just incredible. So yeah, that is why I definitely utilize it in my own routine, in my clients, like frameworks and coaching. And yeah, for me and my journey with breathwork, I think I messaged you when I went to the coast, when I first moved to the coast and I started doing the Cool to Be Conscious on the beach every Saturday morning. Yeah. And I remember messaging Mitch being like, oh my gosh, there's this thing up here. They go to the beach every morning, they meditate, they do breath work, and they do this thing called like connection and gratitude. And it was so funny because before I moved, I was telling you about all of these things and how like you were explaining like gratitude and how you'd met Hugh Van Cullenberg, and that's definitely one of his frameworks that he speaks about is having gratitude for the present moment and being in the now. And so to go up there and to participate in something like that, I'd never heard of it before, and I just kept going and going and going, and now I'm utilizing these techniques in my own work and my own coaching, which is, yeah, it's really cool to know that there are people out there that are opening up that space for these conversations to be had. And I'm really grateful that you're here today willing to share your story, because I know that there will be people listening to this right now resonating with you and going, okay, well, you know, if Mitch got through that or if Mitch did that, then yeah, so can I, which is really powerful.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. Like people's mental health journeys, they don't need to be public, but I'm more than happy to make mine public, seeing as I'm in that AFL field. And if there's anything that people can take away from what I'm saying today, then that gives me a lot of joy in sort of knowing that people are willing to sort of make the right steps into sort of getting them back to feeling their true self.
Mm-hmm. And so what's the next step for you?
So at the moment, my footballing journey is in its 7th year. I still love the game. And like I said before, it is a roller coaster. There is lots of ups and downs, whether it be injury, form, and some other things that happen. And it happens in quite a short period of time as well. But I'm just trying to enjoy the ride for what it is, knowing that it's only temporary. I won't be playing footy for the rest of my life. I like to try and keep myself busy outside of football and give myself that sort of sense of purpose rather than sort of people knowing who I am as the footballer, sort of who I am as the person. So lots of new hobbies, lots of time throughout the weekends. I am doing a bit of study at the moment. I'm in my 3rd year of a business course.
Awesome.
Yeah, so looking at hopefully getting into some sort of event management, very similar to the space that you're sort of working in as well. Mendi is on the back burner at the moment a little bit, just mainly because it's always been framed for myself and my mate Mark as a passion project. There's not 1 cent that we've taken from that business for our own. It's purely sort of for the joy of being able to create apparel, something that we enjoy, get the message out there. And sometimes some things in life get in the way of that you need to prioritise. So it is on the back burner at the moment, but we have the ambition to sort of get it up and running again and keep that sort of messaging and that movement going.
Yeah, I'm so excited for you and what you're about to create as well, especially knowing that you have all these other things as well. And this is what popped into my head as you were saying that. I have found that in the sporting industry especially, a lot of people identify themselves as the player of the sport rather than having that whole thing as their identity. So for people listening who potentially identify themselves as like a mum or identifies themselves as an elite athlete, what would be your advice for people who are doing that and potentially they've been injured or maybe their kid has left home and now living by themselves? Like for me, for example, I've flown to the Gold Coast. My family are in Melbourne. So I know I read a lot of Eckhart Tolle and he explains like when you identify yourself as your environment and it becomes your ego, and then when something happens in life or if something happens in life that takes that away from you, it's like a lot of people can have their emotions dictated by that thing. So I guess what I am trying to say is in regards to how have you gone letting go of AFL being just your identity as an elite athlete and showing up as I'm Mitch playing AFL. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. It's a tricky one because when the footy world ramps up for the first time, it's hard not to sort of get sucked up into the whirlwind of fanfare and people wanting to know who you are, what you're doing, and it's a nice feeling. But I think when you sit back and reflect, and I think I was lucky enough to get into the AFL world experiencing a bit of full-time work, a bit of study, and coming from somewhat country, and knowing that football is fleeting and that there's going to be a period of time in my life in the not too distant future where that will be taken away from me. And you don't want to sort of be holding on to those kind of coattails and riding those sort of successes. You want to sort of be able to reflect on that as a period of time which you thoroughly enjoyed. But it's, yeah, like I said earlier, it's what you do. It's what I did at the time, but it's not who I am. And it probably comes back to your value sets in how you'd like to be seen, how you'd like to be heard, and sort of what you take pride in. So for me, I did a bit of work in my value sets probably a few years ago in terms of trying to bring some people or trying to understand some people in my life that I look up to and for what reasons why, and sort of trying to pick out a few of those in regards to those kind of values. What values out of those people do I enjoy the most that I would like to see in myself? Because at the end of the day, we all strive to do things externally and strive for success, but we need to sort of be able to deal with the adversity and the complications in life. If everything you had in your life that you were doing was stripped away from you and you're down to your bare bones, what are you hanging on to within yourself that makes you get out of bed every morning? And it's more about who you are as a person and your values rather than what you're doing out in society and what success you've had. So
I love that answer. And as you were saying that, it reminded me of one of the principles of NLP, which is something that I teach. And basically it's about modeling. And when you are seeing someone doing the thing that you want to do or is being the person that you want to be, if you start modeling their behavior, then eventually you're going to become not so much that person, but your own version of that person, if that makes sense. So you're going to be like, if you're taking away modeling someone that's really good in business and you want to be really good in business, then if you start modeling their behavior, then you're going to start being really good at business. Or if you're modeling an athlete's routine that you look up to, and then you're like, okay, well, I'm going to start doing that too, you're going to be a really great athlete as well. And so I guess what you're saying, Mitch, is when you start modeling behaviors of the people that you are doing the thing that you want to do, that's when you become the person that you want to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a form of manifestation, I guess. You see glimpses of people in your life that you would like to sort of replicate, or things that you look up to that you'd like to be seen as too. And if you surround yourself with those kind of people for the majority of your life, then eventually those kind of traits will start to become out in yourself. You are a byproduct to a degree of your surroundings, and if you can sort of break it down to how you would like to be seen, then surrounding yourself with those people, eventually those traits will come out in yourself.
100%. And you mentioned manifestation, which is so funny because literally like last episode with Kayo, I spoke about this, but even the one before that, I did a whole solo episode on manifestation. So I'm curious, what's your definition of manifestation? What does that mean to you?
That's an interesting question. I feel like we also have thousands of thoughts each day, and to a degree we get to pick and choose which ones we listen to. There's a lot of noise in your own head, that sort of voice on your shoulder, chip on your shoulder kind of thing. And I feel like when you get an understanding of where you want to strive to, and you start to believe it and you start to live it, and you start to kind of dedicate yourself and give yourself that consistency over a period of time of trying to get to somewhere. I think you're probably a good example yourself, going out on a limb, leaving the Macedon Ranges, flying up to Gold Coast. You've gone through a series of journeys through personal training and now into some mindset stuff. You're still finding your path in what you'd like to do, but the fact that you're sort of the manifestation point of view is like it comes down to your attitude and the way that you've sort of, I guess, conducted yourself in a public setting, and you've never really taken a backward step in trying to grab a hold of what you're striving for. It's about sort of visualizing is another way of kind of like finding a way to manifest what you're looking for. Probably haven't nailed that, but you probably have a better idea of manifestation than myself.
No, that was really good. And to even add on that thread of visualization, like in the past, I remember I would visualize all the time. Like, call me a daydreamer. I'd be doing it majority of the time. And the thing with that is half the time I would disregard or reject those visualizations that would come through when I was in like a slower brainwave state, when I was in a meditative state, right? And I would disregard them. Oh, I'm just making it up, or that's just my imagination. And therefore, it basically saying that those visualizations weren't real. Then with that manifestation process, if in order for you to actually bring something into your reality or bring something into your world, you need to actually believe that it's possible first. For example, like those that have invented anything in this lifetime, in order for them to actually go and invent that thing, they need to believe that it's going to work first. Even though they can't see it, it's not existent yet, if they don't believe that it's real, and they go, oh, I'm just imagining this amazing invention that could change the world, then they're not going to go and create it. So the fact that you are potentially getting a vision or a visualization, or you're daydreaming about this thing, just because it's not real in this reality yet doesn't mean it can't be in the future. And it takes your belief right now in this present moment to go, okay, you know what? I believe that I can do this, and what's the worst thing that could happen? I try and I'm in the same position that I'm in now. So
exactly right. People try and try and try again, and like there's many failures out there, but the fact that people keep getting up and getting after it, like if they have that belief within themselves, that stems down to sort of knowing who they are and backing themselves in, and eventually you'll get to where you want to go. So it probably comes back down to understanding who you are and sort of backing yourself into the hills, because this world's full of ups and downs, and you only really have yourself to fall back on at the end of the day, and you need to believe in who you are and what you're capable of.
And I guess to wrap that into a framework, this whole podcast really, for those of you that want to write things down, what Mitch has said is basically that through life, you're going to have those ups and downs, and that shapes you to who you are today. That's building you to the person that you need to be in order to create that thing that you really want to create deep down. And the framework for that would be to follow the people that you admire and pick the traits that you admire in those people and start embodying them yourself. Focus on your routine. So meditate, breathwork, journaling, gratitude. And if you're going through struggles right now, speak to someone that you really care about or you know supports you. Reach out to them and ask for help or ask for support. And if someone actually comes to you and asks for support, then be like, okay, well, how can I support you right now? How can I help you right now? And I think if we can all start these conversations, just make it a normal thing at the dinner table or when we get coffee or things like this, I think a lot of people will benefit from these conversations that are to be had. And I think this world will be a lot more connected.
Absolutely, yeah. And you just touched on it then, and I'd like to elaborate a bit more, but that act of being able to listen as a voice within your social circles for someone that might be trying to get something off their chest as well, don't underestimate the importance of how much of an impact that can have on a person if you can truly show your intent to be able to understand and empathise and just sort of take on what they're saying, because that person is coming out of their comfort zone to be able to try and get something off their chest, and they've chosen you or backed you in from a privacy point of view and also sort of a shoulder to lean on, and just making sure that you're there for them and that you're giving them their full undivided attention during some conversations like that will go a long way to making that person feel a lot more comfortable, but also a lot more relieved in whatever they may be feeling.
And Brené Brown speaks about this in her TED Talk, I believe, whereby vulnerability is the ultimate act of courage. And so if everyone can step into that vulnerability and step out of their comfort zone and really share what's on their mind or get whatever it is off their chest and communicate how they feel, and rather than be in their head, drop into their heart and speak from the heart, I think, like I said, this world would be way more connected, would have a lot deeper relationships, and the creations that can come from that vibration or that energy, yeah, they definitely don't exist yet, but they will if we all believe that it's possible to happen so.
Absolutely. Definitely.
So, Mitch, where can my listeners find you if they want to learn more about you, if they want to connect with you, and if they resonated with this podcast, how can they find you?
Yeah, a little bit of my story and Mark's story in regards to Mendel and who we are and what we try to create is on our website. So that's just mendel.com.au.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, and obviously our socials from a business point of view, Mendel, but also mine personally. I'm not the most regular poster on socials, but I am quite responsive and more than happy to sort of have chats to people here and there if they show an interest in who I am and what I'm doing. So yeah, probably they're the two best bets.
Awesome. Amazing. And Mitch, I have one last question for you today. Are you ready?
Go for it.
Amazing. So if you could give the listeners one piece of advice, and it doesn't have to relate to what we've spoken about today at all, but the first thing that comes to mind from your heart, what is something they need to hear right now?
I heard something the other day which really resonated with me. I think it might have been on a podcast, and it's to do with change. Life is fluid and forever changing. We're forever getting older. Things are moving. We lose our vitality. There's a lot of things that you've got to really adapt with, and it's about, for me, just appreciating and accepting your existence, and it comes back to that gratitude for what you already have and who you are. So for me, like, you're going to be faced with things in the future, but it's about appreciating the here and now and what you already have.
I love that. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming on today.
No worries. Thanks, Elise.
Pleasure.
Thank you for being a part of the Generation Elevation community. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to leave a 5-star rating, written review, share, and tag me on Instagram at elise.riley. Until next time, keep loving, keep learning, and keep rising.